What's poppin', barbarians? It's me, MT, and welcome back to the Heavy Spoiler Show, y'all. Heavy spoilers coming your way for the Shogun series on FX because we have got to get into it. So grab your favorite two katanas and let's cover this conflict. After an insanely stressful season of playing politics and slaying assassins, the final episode of the Shogun series of course ends with Yoshi Toranaga on top, thanks to the brave and noble sacrifice of Mariko at the end of episode 9. And as much as many of the audience wanted Mariko to walk away from that explosion completely unscathed, she did take the full force of that impact, leaving John Blackthorne to grieve the loss of the only woman that he had ever loved. Well, okay, the second woman that he loved, because dude had a whole life and family back over in England that he totally ditched in favor of sailing the high seas. But luckily for John, the concept of paying child support wasn't invented yet, so you could just do shit like that at that point in history. But anyways, as the true operative behind Yoshi Toranaga's Crimson Sky offensive to take the capital, Mariko's true role as a hostage inside of Osaka Castle was to do exactly what Toranaga never could: change the heart of Lady Ochiba, Mariko's childhood friend and the mother of the Taiko's heir. Through Mariko's sacrifice, Ochiba's extremely hardened heart towards Toranaga would eventually soften just enough for her to shift her influence from Ishido's army towards Toranaga's army, thus causing all of the other houses that were following Ishido to be forced to ally themselves under the banner of the heir. And while this may seem like a risky bargain for Toranaga to take with Mariko's life, it was one that he was certain would work, not only due to his clever political loophole maneuvering, but mostly because he knew why Ochiba hated him so much. According to Lady Ochiba herself, when Mariko's father sent her away from their childhood home, it was like all the happiness from Lady Ochiba's life was stripped away from her. So, with Mariko's last words being a sharp rebuke of Ishido's actions before those very same actions led to Mariko's death, Ochiba's anger at Toranaga was now outweighed by her anger at Ishido, as it was his lust for power that actually caused Mariko's life to permanently end. Toranaga might have temporarily taken Mariko away from Lady Ochiba, but it was Ishido himself that caused a major source of Lady Ochiba's life happiness to go out with a door-busting bang. And while it was super sad and frustrating for Mariko to meet such a gruesome end, her sacrifice also gave Toranaga and his army a lot more time to prepare for their upcoming face-off with Ishido and his forces, as Ochiba would stop Ishido from immediately attacking Toranaga right away to allow Toranaga's people to appropriately grieve the loss of Mariko. But anyways, in order for suspicions of the attack to not lie on himself, but instead on Toranaga, Ishido is, of course, forced to let all of his hostages go, including Blackthorne and that two-timing Yabu piece of Yabu shit named Yabushige, who, in a last bid to gain favor with Ishido, facilitated the late-night arrival of the assassins that came to eliminate Mariko and all of the other family members of the regions that were demanding permits to leave. And after Mariko's violent death at the end of a string of brutal assassinations, Yabushige is left temporarily deafened and overwhelmed with guilt, as he was fully expecting Mariko to only be captured at the end of this brutal assault. However, Yabushige's guilt would cause him to absolutely lose his marbles a little bit, causing him to start seeing things that weren't there and openly blabbing about whatever nonsense came across his mind, like straight up stream of consciousness talking. However, unfortunately for this Yabadababushige-ass bitch, his loose lips would ultimately sink his own ship and lead to his own demise when he verbally expressed his shame after Mariko's death in front of one of Mariko's ladies-in-waiting inside of that cellar after being seen personally letting the intruders into the premises just moments before the attack. After witnessing both of these things, one of Mariko's homies would then send a Harry Potter owl to Yabushige's nephew Omi, who was forced to tell Toranaga, which then naturally led to Yabushige's arrest and death sentence immediately upon Yabushige and Blackthorne's return to the village of Ajiro. But Yabushige is not the only person surprised when they return to the village, as John Blackthorne would be greeted by the horrific sight of his beloved ship, the Erasmus, destroyed and sunk to the bottom of the sea, a sinking that Toranaga would falsely tell Blackthorne a mysterious party of Christians were responsible for. only for Toranaga to later reveal to Yabushige at his execution that it was indeed him who destroyed the Erasmus the entire time in order to keep John Blackthorne from ever leaving Japan. Not only because of Blackthorne's knowledge of naval warfare and seafaring, but also because Toranaga just genuinely found Blackthorne to be amusing company to be around. So Toranaga was perfectly fine with having Blackthorne just believe that it was merely just Mariko's will to have his ship destroyed in order to keep him or any of his crew from murdering any more Portuguese Catholics, especially after Blackthorne passed Toranaga's test of loyalty when Blackthorne begged Toranaga to spare the Christians in the village of Ajiro from being slaughtered for destroying his boat. Toranaga knows how to play himself some serious 4D chess, man. Like, this dude is playing everyone out here. But anyways, the sight of that sunken ship would not be the first surprise that Blackthorne would have that day, as he was straight up not supposed to make it back to Ajiro at all. Since the Regent Kiyama originally wanted Blackthorne's Protestant ass dead due to the Portuguese Catholics' overall war with the Protestant nations of Europe, Ishido basically gave the Catholic regents Kiyama and Ono the green light to do whatever they wished to Blackthorne after Kiyama's men escorted him out of Osaka. And Kiyama's men would have ambushed Blackthorne and killed him in the forest too if it wasn't for Mariko's protective foresight that had her beg the Portuguese Catholic Church to ensure Blackthorne's safe arrival to the boat that would eventually take him and Yabushige back to Ajiro. But another surprise that Blackthorne was met with during this episode was, of course, the revelation that his former consort that he never used, Fuji, had found new purpose in life and has committed herself to the Catholic Church as a nun. A reveal that deeply hurt a Blackthorne that was already forced to deal with the unbearable weight of losing his beloved Mariko. So, in an effort to keep his entire world from changing at the same time, Blackthorne attempts to refuse Fuji's request so that he wouldn't have to be all alone. But Fuji simply tells him that her mind is made up and that there's nothing that he can really do about it. However, before the two part for good, Blackthorne and Fuji take a boat out into the water in order for them to both honor and let go of the people that were taken from them over the course of this devastating conflict, with Fuji dumping the ashes of her dead husband and newborn baby into the sea before helping Blackthorne drop Mariko's crucifix in as well, with Fuji telling Blackthorne that his hand should be the last to touch Mariko's crucifix, which was a throwback to when Mariko ordered that Fuji's hands be the last to hold her baby. But anyways, with all 5 houses being united under Toranaga, with Lady Ochiba's blessing him with the banner of the air, Toranaga finally achieves the status of shogun, the true military leader of Japan, with John Blackthorne spending the remainder of his life in Japan alongside Toranaga to help him build and train a new fleet of warships. But I know what some of you may be thinking. MT, how the hell do you know that John Blackthorne would stay in Japan for the rest of his life? I mean, the series clearly ends before showing us what would occur after Toranaga's rise to shogun after all, and didn't we see an old John Blackthorne at the beginning of the episode talking to his grandchildren in England? That seems kind of weird, dude. And you know what? These are all great points, but to answer the part about the old man Blackthorne imagery that we get throughout this episode, it seems to me that this was very much meant to be a dream that Blackthorne experiences when that explosion that would kill Mariko knocked him unconscious, which is why he can be seen holding the very same necklace that we clearly see him dump into the water towards the end of the finale. So if that was actually the future, he wouldn't have that necklace. This was of course very much meant to symbolize Blackthorne rejecting the timeline where he heads back to his family in England, only to spend the rest of his life suffering on the inside while he fruitlessly held on to a dead Mariko. But the reason why I know for sure that Blackthorne will end up staying in Japan for the rest of his life is because the Shogun series is of course an adaptation of a novel written by James Clavell in 1975, and then 5 years later in 1980, Paramount TV would then produce a miniseries adaptation based on Clavell's Shogun that would air over the course of 5 nights on NBC. But this time around, showrunners Justin Marks and Rachel Kondo are series creators for FX, but I'm kind of getting off topic here. Anyways, since Shogun is a piece of historical fiction based on real-world historical figures that existed in Japan in the early 17th century, the character of John Blackthorne was actually heavily based on English sailor William Adams, a navigator who, much like John Blackthorne, would become the first Englishman to reach Japan. Born in the town of Gilliam in Kent, England in 1564, William Adams would become an apprentice to the shipbuilder Nicholas Higgins, who taught Adams all the crucial skills and techniques of navigating the high seas, and those skills would come in clutch when England would become entangled in a war with Spain, as Spain would be on a quest to spread their Spanish Catholicism throughout Europe and beyond. And since England was a Protestant nation at the time, Spain wanted those tea-drinking bastards to stop their Protestant nonsense and submit under their Catholic rule. So since that obviously was not going to fly with William Adams's Protestant white ass, your boy ended up serving in England's Royal Navy as captain of a resupply ship under the command of Sir Francis Drake from the Uncharted games. Not long after this war, Adams would then start to form a relationship with Dutch traders because the Dutch were also Protestants, and then they would work together with Adams to go on an expedition to South America, with Japan being a backup destination just in case things in South America fell through. And with 5 ships under his command, Adams would leave from Texel in North Holland to sail across the Atlantic, losing 2 of the ships in his fleet in the process, which is not that fun. And after crossing the Straits of Magellan, Adams would find his way to the southern end of South America, and then would work his way across the west coast of the continent with the goal of trading with the people of the region. John Blackthorne actually draws a map of this entire journey when he first gives Toranaga the information of where he came from and what his business was with the Dutch. However, due to the immense aggressive Spanish presence in the west coast of South America, Adams's fleet would be forced to sail west far away from South America to their plan B in Japan, with the only ship to actually make it across the cruel and unforgiving waters to the island of Japan being the Dutch ship called the Liefde, or if I'm saying that right, the Liefde, I don't know, which means charity or love in Dutch, which is the counterpart to the Erasmus in the Shogun series, a ship named after the famous Dutch theologian Erasmus of Rotterdam. But anyways, when Adams landed in Bungo, Japan with what remained of his crew, which was basically 23 extremely sick men out of the 100 that actually started the journey, all of the weapons and money on his ship were immediately confiscated by the local Japanese forces, with Adams himself immediately brought to Osaka Castle to face Tokugawa Ieyasu, the lord of the region that the character Yoshi Toranaga is based on in the show, with the name Toranaga obviously being a slight variation of the name Tokugawa. But anyways, Tokugawa found the prospect of this English foreigner's arrival to his land to be a super exciting one, and poked the hell out of William Adams's brain when it came to everything that Adams knew about his homeland of Britain, their religion, and all of his shipbuilding and seafaring techniques that he learned during the war. But while all this was happening, the Portuguese Catholics were seeing Tokugawa giving William Adams, a Protestant Englishman, the time of day, to which they were like, "Don't listen to this man, he's a Protestant pirate, he's gonna take everything that you guys got. He's evil." Basically just trying to accuse Adams of being a pirate so that Tokugawa would execute him, much like that douche tried to do to Blackthorne when he first arrived to Japan in the show. However, after spending a ridiculous amount of time learning about the strange world outside of Japan and being blown away by Adams's radically different way of building ships, Tokugawa would ignore all the demands of the Portuguese Catholics and would then commission Adams to build him some westernized ships of his own, which Adams did to the delight of Tokugawa, who would then eventually award Adams with the honor of becoming Japan's first ever white guy samurai when he presented him with the gift of 2 samurai katanas, which was a big deal. And after that, William Adams would then be awarded with his own fief in Japan after being forced by Tokugawa to stay in Japan for the rest of his life as one of his closest advisors when it came to everything about the western part of the world, a responsibility that Adams would take up until his death at the age of 55 in May 1620. So, if John Blackthorne is modeled after William Adams, then the likelihood of Blackthorne ever returning back to England after the end of the Shogun series is pretty much zero, and Toranaga seems just as keen on keeping Blackthorne in Japan as Tokugawa was with Adams. However, since he couldn't go back to England, Adams was still allowed to send money and souvenirs and whatnot back to his wife and kids in England, which is pretty nice, but I'm sure his wife wasn't exactly all that jazzed about him getting remarried to another woman in Japan and fathering 2 other kids with her. But, you know, that's kind of what happens when the lord of a Japanese province needs your help. But anyways, with all this being said, Shogun is pretty much an absolute masterpiece of a television program, and everyone involved with its production should feel immensely proud, especially Toranaga actor Hiroyuki Sanada, who also served as one of the producers of this show. Hiroyuki went out of his way to make sure that all of the elements of the show were authentic to Japanese traditions and life during the 17th century, with Sanada helping organize a crew of both Japanese and Western talent to work together to faithfully transport the audience back in time to the days where honor dictated the tides of war. And not only were the sets and costumes beautifully and realistically designed here, but the decision to make the show mostly in the Japanese language was such a great call, because God knows it must have been tempting as hell to just make all the actors speak English in order for the production to move more smoothly for all the Westerners involved with producing the show. Though constantly having to translate the script from English to Japanese, then back from Japanese to English, back and forth over and over again was a bit of a tough assignment for everyone involved, it is super important to have a program like this that goes out of their way to engross the average non-Japanese viewer into a culture that they know very little about, as projects like these help the people of the world become more accepting of and excited about groups that may seem radically different than what they're used to, while also exposing them to some of the best actors Japan has to offer. So hopefully viewers that have avoided non-English international content in the past will be more willing to expand their horizons after this show. Like, Shogun definitely had some strong Game of Thrones vibes for damn sure for me, especially in the suspense department, as pretty much every episode ended in a way that makes you want to immediately watch the next episode to see what happens next. So that addictiveness combined with the incredible storytelling that is wrapped in an impressive bow of authentic 17th century Japanese presentation definitely makes Shogun a show that should be nominated for multiple Emmy Awards in my opinion. But anyways, that is it for this Ending Explained for the Shogun series on FX. Let us know what your favorite part of the season was in the comment section down below. But anyways, you can follow me at Mastertainment on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube, and when you do, hit that notification bell so you get notifications every time we upload a video. But anyways, you guys are amazing for watching this video. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.